One day in 1989, the Queen of England was in an auditorium conducting her birthday honors ceremony. The Queen wore a purple coat with her signature smile on her face. Frankly, although as the monarch of the British Empire, the Queen could enjoy the finest material comforts, this job was not always enjoyable. Just the lengthy investiture ceremonies each year were enough to test the Queen's patience. After ceremony, the Queen had become a relentless honors-bestowing machine. Suddenly in front of the Queen appeared a little old man with white hair. The old man's face showed neither the joy of receiving a medal nor the seriousness of attending a ceremony. He trotted with his short legs to the Queen. When he got closer, the Queen was surprised to find this old man was even shorter than her, and his appearance was also quite amusing. However, the well-seasoned Queen remained quite calm and smoothly began to bestow the honor on the old man. In that very brief moment, the old man leaned into the Queen and said something to her. After he said it, the Queen broke into a genuine smile. To this day, no one knows what the old man said at that moment, but what everyone does know is this: Britain, with the most escape attempts in history, had finally used his sharp tongue on the Queen herself. In 1915, Dominic Bruce was born in Durham County in northern England into a remarkable family. Bruce's father, William, was a coal miner with a very hands-on approach and had a reputation as the most ill-tempered man in North England. From the time Bruce was 4 years old, his father constantly disciplined him physically. But Bruce's mother, Mary, was a kind woman, always enthusiastic about charity work and known as the Angel of Hebron. So the Bruce family presented a very contradictory dynamic. The parents often coordinated when educating their child. Whenever Bruce ran off afraid of his father, his mother would gently call for Bruce to come home and then let his father discipline him behind closed doors. At the age of 8, young Bruce decided to escape his father's harsh rule. He exchanged his saved pocket money for a train ticket and resolutely decided to become a wanderer. After timing his parents' departure, young Bruce's escape plan was very successful. Riding the train, Bruce smoothly arrived in London. However, just as he got to the train station, a police officer grabbed young Bruce. "Dominic, what are you doing running off to London?" Bruce looked closely and saw his great uncle. "Are not you a policeman in Newcastle?" Just like that, Bruce's first escape was cut short, captured on the spot by his uncle at the London train station. A few days later, he was escorted back home, ending his first escape journey. From then on, Bruce began to realize a certain characteristic about himself. No matter how far he ran, he would always return to where he started. The year was 1927. A 12-year-old Bruce had entered secondary school. But Bruce was very unhappy in secondary school because he was short and an outsider. All the other students picked on him. Bruce did not back down. He faced every challenge head-on, but his natural abilities were lacking. Due to his insufficient physical prowess, Bruce began to switch to verbal attacks. Unlike someone like me who is tongue-tied, in his interactions with classmates, Bruce's language skills grew rapidly. He became endlessly creative with his insults. How strong was his wit, you ask? He could out-talk anyone anywhere. Perhaps because he spent too much energy on daily banter. Bruce spent 8 years in secondary school before graduating. With his less than stellar grades, college was out of the question. To make a living, he had to join the army. But tragically, even with Britain's strict recruitment standards, Bruce was rejected. The recruiter told him, "With your small frame and height, you would be considered short even among the female soldiers. We do not really care about a bit of image. We are mainly worried our enemies will laugh at us for using child soldiers in Britain." The recruiting officer's words made Bruce's defenses crumble. "Child soldiers, are you serious? Have you even been to school?" The papers all said, "The average human height is 1.6 meters. I am of standard medium build. Why are you discriminating against me?" Faced with Bruce's anger, the recruiter pointed him in a clear direction. "I am an army recruiter. With your height, even if you made it to the battlefield, it would be a 3-to-7 split with the enemy. They would land 3 punches for every 7 you throw. It is no use arguing. I do know a place that welcomes shorter guys though. Why do not you try the Air Force?" It turned out the recruiter's advice was indeed reliable. Thanks to his magnificent stature, Bruce successfully joined the Royal Air Force in 1935. After training, Bruce was assigned to the 214th Aero Squadron, beginning his military career. In the Aero Squadron, Bruce's position was a gunner. His crew was led by Officer Mort, and they mainly flew Halifax bombers. At this time, World War I had not yet broken out. The crew's work was mostly routine training drills and welcoming and seeing off planes. Because the work was relaxed, the small group was full of colorful characters. For example, team leader Morton was known for grabbing the cemetery night watchman after a few drinks to dance on the graves, which made him famous throughout the unit. Under this kind of leadership, the sharp-tongued Bruce felt right at home in the crew. He fit in perfectly. The entire crew had a certain rigorous, yet trustworthy and reliable quality. In March 1937, Morton's crew received a small job. They needed to go from their Norfolk County Air Base to Hertford Airfield to pick up a new plane. At 8 in the morning, the crew officially took off. After a journey filled with laughter and song, the crew arrived over their destination at 10 am. As the main pilot, Officer Morton was having a bit too much fun. He decided to show off his superb flying skills. He made a sharp dive, lowering the altitude, preparing to find the airfield at a very low altitude. Just as everyone was marveling at Officer Morton's skills, Bruce at the observation window expressed his confusion. "Hey, is that a train coming towards us?" Before Bruce could finish his sentence, the plane at 60 miles per hour scraped over the top of a high-speed train. In the friction, the entire roof of the dining car was completely torn off. The chef inside the car stared blankly at the sky. His upward gaze was just like the steamed fish dish they were making. After the impact, the plane tumbled and plunged into a field. Bruce passed out on the spot. Fortunately, his comrades were very reliable and carried him to safety. During his hospital stay, Bruce heard the final outcome. The bad news was the plane was a total loss, and the train was also heavily damaged. Your crew is to be disbanded immediately. But the good news was, the chef in the dining car was unharmed. In June 1938, Bruce returned to duty from his injury leave. This time, he was assigned to Officer Addison's crew, serving as a radio operator. Compared to the free-spirited Officer Morton, his new leader, Addison was a serious and cautious man. He strictly managed the full-mouthed Bruce. However, this did not mean Bruce was safe from then on. On October 6, 1938, during a night training exercise, Addison's crew was piloting a bomber over West Yorkshire, circling in the sky. Suddenly, a pale white light illuminated the entire cabin. After a loud bang, Bruce heard Officer Addison's roar. The plane has been struck by lightning. The main engine has failed. I have opened the escape hatch. Bail out quickly. We are about to go down. As the radio operator, Bruce quickly reported the emergency to the ground, then grabbed his parachute and ran for the escape hatch. But he found a group of new recruits from the crew were all standing at the door, hesitating to jump, blocking the way completely. Bruce was furious. "What are you fools waiting for? Jump!" He cursed as he ran to the hatch door and jumped out without hesitation. Then his parachute bag got caught on a hook at the bottom of the movable hatch door. Bruce had jumped out, but was left hanging outside. The other crew members had been motivated by Bruce and were about to jump too, but seeing Bruce being whipped around by the plane like a kite, they quickly told the pilot it is bad. Bruce is caught on the hatch door. We have to do something quickly. Officer Addison was in a state of panic. He quickly pressed the hatch control button. The hatch closed rapidly. Then everyone watched in shock as Bruce was flung back into the plane by the hatch. But because everyone was so shocked, not a single person helped get him down. So when the hatch opened again, Bruce was flung out once more. Then the pilot raised the hatch again. And this time Bruce was flung back in. 2 times in and out. Bruce finally got free from the hatch. He quickly led the other members to parachute out. Fortunately, under his courageous leadership, the entire crew except for him suffered no casualties. As the only person in aviation history to exit a plane 3 times, but only land once, Bruce later received the Air Force Medal. Because this jump left him with such a great psychological scar, Bruce afterwards began to diligently study flying techniques. When the war broke out, Bruce had already become a flight instructor at the Royal Air Force Base in Haverhill. If nothing unexpected happened, he would have likely gone on to do great things in the air battles of World War. Of course, in this series, nothing unexpected happening is impossible. After studying aviation technology for several years, as World War I began, Bruce found that all the techniques he had learned were of no use. As the war deepened, Instructor Bruce could no longer work comfortably from the rear. In May 1940, he was ordered to pilot a bomber to bomb German forces in France. Bruce's squadron flew several missions in a row. Although he boasted that his plane once flew to Berlin at night, the outcome was clear. The Air Force's actions could not reverse the decline on the ground at all. In the spring of 1941, Bruce was officially promoted to warrant officer. In June of that year, his squadron received orders to dispatch bombers across the North Sea to attack German ships off the coast of Belgium. Although the mission objective was simple, under the design of the geniuses at headquarters, this simple mission had a few small highlights. First, the British bombing time was chosen to be during the day. Secondly, to facilitate the search, the bomber squadron was to fly east along the German-controlled French coast the entire way. Finally, this mission had no fighter escort. This kind of self-destructive mission plan soon yielded a self-destructive result. Bruce's plane had just crossed the channel when it was engaged by 2 German fighter planes and was quickly shot down in flames. The pilot, Arnold, in the burning cockpit, managed to keep the plane level. After stabilizing the plane, he allowed the crew members to bail out one by one, but Arnold himself lost his chance to escape. In the end, he went down with the out-of-control plane into the sea. But what Arnold sacrificed himself to give his comrades a chance was only a slim one. In World War, parachuting into the sea was a very dangerous act, and Bruce could not swim at all. Sure enough, as soon as Bruce hit the water, he began to sink. After a few desperate struggles, Bruce felt that this was probably the end for him. However, just as Bruce was seeing his great-grandmother, the plane's gunner Bucks descended from the sky and pulled him up. Bucks was an excellent swimmer. After pulling Bruce up, he found a piece of wood, and they both held onto it to float. While floating, the two of them figured trying to swim back to England seemed a bit difficult. Let us hope the base sends someone to rescue us. The higher-ups should send a search party. But after floating in the sea for 4 or 5 hours, there was no sign of rescue. In this desperate situation, the two suddenly heard the sound of a motorboat, and then they received some good news and some bad news. The good news was the motorboat was indeed looking for them. The bad news was the ones looking for them were Germans. After the air battle, the Germans had dispatched a rescue boat, and sure enough, they found these 2 guys in the vast sea. Notably, this group of Germans followed the rules. They took Bruce to a hospital for treatment. A few days later, the discharged Bruce was sent to Spangenberg Castle, although both were castles. but compared to Colditz prisoner of war camp, the conditions at Spangenberg prisoner of war camp were not ideal. It mainly housed British and French pilots. The sanitation was poor and the environment was bad. The guards were fierce and intimidating. The high walls were difficult to escape from, and supplies were scarce and sold at high prices. On his first day here, Bruce clashed with a guard. However, it was not because the guard was trying to pick a fight with Bruce, but because upon seeing the 1.6-meter tall Bruce, the guard out of conscience began to scold the British for being inhuman, for sending such a small child to the battlefield. This righteous condemnation broke Bruce's composure. He angrily cursed at the guard, but the guard did not retaliate, saying he would not pick on a child. After entering the detention area, Bruce first through the Red Cross, wrote a letter home, telling his wife to only remarry after confirming he was gone. Then, he began to consult with the other prisoners in the camp. Since we are all pilots, and considered important assets to the military. After being captured for so long, why have not you tried to escape? Hearing this question, a pilot imprisoned with Bruce, Tunstall gave a bitter smile. You think we do not want to? Tunstall said he was an engineer by trade, and was an expert in the art of prison breaks. He wanted to start digging a tunnel from the first day he arrived, but the problem was he had the skills to dig a tunnel, but the castle was too small. There was no place to hide the excavated dirt. To solve this problem, Bruce carefully observed for a few days, and suddenly had a flash of inspiration. The wooden boxes piled in the castle square are hollow. If we put the dirt we dig out in there, would not that solve it? His accomplice slapped his thigh and said, you are a genius. But, Bruce then raised a second question. After we get out, how do we get back to England? Tunstall said, you do not have to worry about that at all. We are all pilots. Once we are out we can just find any plane. I have studied the map of German airfields. 30 kilometers north of us in Kassel, there is a huge airfield. We can just go in and get a plane. At this point, Tunstall also asked Bruce a question. Do you speak German? Bruce shook his head blankly. With no other choice, Tunstall found a German-speaking pilot, Eustace, a newcomer. The two of us who speak German will cover for you who does not. If we run into anyone, you just follow behind and pretend to be mute. With the plan set, the three began to prepare supplies for their escape. One day, they accidentally stumbled into an empty room in the castle. Then they discovered it was originally a dormitory. In the room there were civilian clothes, an officer's uniform and a handgun, a map, a compass and a lot of other supplies. After opening this treasure chest, Bruce suddenly realized, brothers, we do not need to dig a tunnel anymore. With these supplies we can just blend in and walk out. Tunstall completely agreed with his view. The three men began to observe the castle guards, and then they discovered there was indeed an opportunity. Each time the Red Cross entered and exited the camp, they only needed to be led by an officer. The sentries would not ask questions, and now we have an officer's uniform and disguises. On September 3, 1941, on another Red Cross visit day, the trio set out. In the camp, an officer leading two plainclothes staff members walked out of the main gate. As they approached the sentry, the officer complained to the chief physician in German, heavens, it is almost 2 o'clock. We must hurry. The chief physician nodded while taking a blood pressure reading, motioning for his assistant beside him to speed up, and the assistant muttered in German that he was very tired and had not had lunch and so on. Facing the superior officer, the German sentry gave a standard military salute. The three men swaggered out of the castle and hurried towards Kassel. Soon the German troops in the castle discovered the trio's escape, and quickly dispatched a search party. Bruce and the others had not even had time to prepare when they ran into the German search party on the road. Huddled by the roadside, the trio saw the German search party coming straight for them. After stopping, several German soldiers got out and looked the three over for a while. After seeing Tunstall's officer insignia, they politely inquired, excuse me sirs, have you seen 3 escapees around here? Tunstall replied, no. Have not seen them at all. Then the Germans said, sorry to bother you, got back in their car and left. After shaking off the search party, the trio ran for their lives and arrived at Kassel Airfield the next day. In their plan, getting a plane should not have been difficult. Tunstall was wearing a major's uniform, which was enough to deal with the young soldiers stationed there. But as luck would have it, at the airfield, there happened to be a captain, who stopped them and demanded to inspect them. Tunstall turned and walked away. They walked towards a building, while shouting at the captain, we have an urgent mission. Do not delay us. A few minutes later the airfield's alarm sounded. The trio was exposed. The secondary reason was their nervousness, which made their expressions too unnatural. But the main reason was the Germans could not figure out why an officer would go to a scrapyard to carry out an urgent mission. However, when the airfield alarm sounded, the trio, already realizing their plan had failed, had already made a run for it. After leaving the airfield, the three decided to head for the Belgian border, although, at this time the Nazis had posted wanted posters everywhere. But it caused no trouble for their journey at all. They picked fruit, stole bread, climbed trees to get bird eggs, raided villages, entered cities, and prepared to hike through the Ardennes. Although during their food foraging, they were mistaken for thieves and roughed up several times, the trio was never once suspected of being fugitives. While passing the Eder River, they even took some time to visit the Moon Dam. However, at this time a German girl, for some reason, took a liking to one of the trio, and kept trying to chat with them. Worried about being exposed, Tunstall quickly tried to dissuade the lady. Those two are not allowed to speak with you. The girl asked confusedly why. Old Tunstall said they have been arrested, and then quickly signaled to Bruce get in character. Bruce immediately put on a show, twisting his mouth, drooling and acting like a creep. The girl asked why were they arrested. Tunstall said, they committed the most cruel and debauched crimes a soldier could imagine. The girl was shocked and asked what did they do. Tunstall braced himself and said, "They assaulted 4 women from Tonglia." The German girl ran away scared. The trio continued their journey. After another week of wandering, their food ran out and they decided to live off the land, planning to find a farm and take something. They quickly found a farm, but sneaking in was not so smooth. This darn farm was heavily guarded. After finally sneaking in after dark, the 3 found a warehouse and ate their fill, planning to continue their journey the next day. As soon as Bruce left the warehouse he froze. Damn, this is not a farm. Looking at the guards at the gate, this is a labor camp. I was wondering why the supplies here were so abundant. Turns out it is from hard labor. At this moment Tunstall remained calm. Do not panic. We have a backup plan. Do not we still have the officer's uniform? Put it on and blending in with the German army should not be hard. In theory. Old Tunstall's idea was correct if it were not for the fact that the labor camp's sentry was the same one from Spangenberg before, and the sentry happened to recognize Tunstall. The 3 of them might have gotten out. So a few minutes later, the disguised officer Tunstall ran into an old acquaintance at the gate. The 3 were taken back to Spangenberg and thrown into solitary confinement in a dark room. Being extremely bored, Bruce could only spend his days insulting the sentries to pass the time. Since the German devils could not understand him anyway, he treated it as a mouth exercise. After his confinement ended, and learning his 2 brothers might be executed, Bruce continued to try to escape. After failing a few more times, the prisoner of war camp's commander was successfully provoked, and sent him directly to Warburg. Compared to the previous prisoner of war camp, the conditions at Warburg prisoner of war camp were slightly worse. Besides being located deep in the mountains and having wooden huts, more importantly this camp was an unfinished project. When Bruce was transferred it was winter. The Germans intended to let him freeze to an unhappy end. However, after arriving at Warburg, Bruce discovered the guards here were incredibly lax, so he decided to teach them a lesson. One day, Bruce disguised himself as a cleaner, and easily walked out of the camp, but only after leaving the camp did Bruce understand the reason for the lax security. The next day a blizzard hit. Almost frozen to an unhappy end, Bruce quickly went back and turned himself in. After a brief period in solitary confinement, Bruce planned to wait for warmer weather and try another escape in disguise. He got a piece of cloth from a Dutch prisoner of war and started tailoring, and happily earned another week in confinement. The disguise plan failed, so Bruce turned his attention to the camp's train. If he could time it right and jump on, would not he be able to ride the train out of there? A few days later Bruce gave it a try. Unfortunately his aim was slightly off. His escape attempt almost turned into a successful track-lying self-punishment, and he was confined again. While he was in confinement, Bruce's creativity inspired others. A Polish prisoner of war used the same trick to successfully escape. In fact, this was not the first time Bruce had inspired other prisoners of war. In Spangenberg Castle, his method of using wooden boxes to hide dirt was adopted by other prisoners of war who successfully dug a tunnel and escaped, and his idea of disguising as Red Cross personnel was later copied by others. A year later, someone successfully returned to their homeland using this trick. After Bruce's constant escape attempts, the commander of Warburg was also angry. Alright, so you won't freeze to an unhappy end, right? Love to escape, do you? This time I am sending you to our country's most brutal, most secure camp to straighten you out properly. In March 1942, after a heavily guarded transfer, Bruce was finally sent to the Nazi Empire's most brutal fortress, Colditz prisoner of war camp. Regarding the story of Colditz, we have told it many times before. In this brutal prisoner of war camp, the German guards did not give him a hard time, but the other prisoners of war right away gave Bruce a title of honor, the shortest man in Colditz. By this time Bruce was long immune to such verbal attacks, but that did not mean he accepted the ridicule. In Colditz, he focused on getting close to a big shot. Viscount Lascelles, a cousin of King George V. At this time the bored Viscount had already been imprisoned for over a year. Faced with the linguistically talented Bruce, the two quickly became friends. After getting to know each other for a while, Bruce suddenly revealed his intentions. He said that while reading the newspaper, he learned a fun fact. Those racist Germans did a survey. The average lifespan of a human is 41.2 years, and the average height is 5 feet 3 inches. The Viscount found this survey very interesting, and quickly shared it with his upper-class friends. After several sharings, someone finally raised a question. By the way, Bruce's height seems to be exactly 5 feet 3 inches, right? From then on, Bruce had a new nickname in Colditz. The man of average human height, or to simplify it even more, the average officer. Some time after being released from prison, the friendship of the average officer and the Viscount, through a letter to home, applied for a major's commission for Bruce. Therefore in April 1942, Bruce, in a German prisoner of war camp, was successfully promoted to major. With the base for promotion and the camp's escape practices, Bruce naturally could not be left behind. For someone like him, to live to the end was to live to the end. In Colditz, one day he would be prying at the cell door, the next day stealing a guard's uniform, repeatedly exploring escape methods. After a period of exploration, the camp's security chief Priam had had enough. Colditz allows escape attempt, but that does not mean you can freely damage the camp's property. Escaping is legal, but you breaking the door and stealing a uniform is damaging state property. You have to pay for it. So Priam decided to sanction Bruce. He sued Bruce to clear his name. Bruce, from prison, hired a lawyer for himself. After a round of legal battles, Bruce was acquitted. In September 1942, the camp's new commander X arrived. After taking office, Aix demanded strict control over the prisoners' personal belongings. Excess items had to be packed in boxes and uniformly sent to a warehouse outside the castle for storage. The reason Aix did this was firstly for easier management, and secondly because his superior General Wolfe was coming for an inspection. To make a good impression on the leader, it was better to tidy up. However, Bruce's magnificent height came into play at this moment. When collecting the items, Bruce managed to bring a bedsheet and squeeze himself into a box of supplies, which was then uniformly sent to the warehouse. That night, Bruce left a note. "I do not like the air in Colditz. Goodbye," and then turned the bedsheet into a rope, and instantly escaped. The next morning at assembly, General Wolfe came for his inspection. Of the camp's guards, neither noticed one person was missing, nor did they see the bedsheet swaying in the wind, and until General Wolfe's inspection at noon, the entire camp was unaware of this incident. Finally, because a housewife outside the camp saw the fluttering bedsheet, the guards finally realized someone had escaped. Of course, Bruce's buff had not worn off. He was soon back in Colditz. After he got out, he was caught for trying to ride a ferry without a ticket, and was handed over to the police, and was thus quickly sent back to Colditz. After returning to Colditz, Bruce was put in solitary confinement, compared to the dark and sunless solitary cells. Solitary confinement in Colditz was different from elsewhere. Simply put, it was a private room, with all the usual yard time and entertainment. The living conditions were even more spacious than a regular cell. So this kind of punishment for the escaping prisoners of war represented a blind spot collision, represented fearlessness. Bruce was not at all afraid of solitary confinement. However, the camp's measures were not entirely without effect. By this time, Bruce had accumulated over 10 escape records. Security Chief Aix therefore put out the word, "Whoever catches Bruce escaping can open fire immediately." With this order, Bruce's relaxed heart finally became tense. To ensure his safety, Bruce decided to learn some German. He asked the prisoners of war around him, "How do you say 'I surrender' in German?" Several German-speaking prisoners of war quickly taught him. Through repeated practice, everyone praised Bruce's linguistic talent. "The way you say 'I surrender' now is authentic Old Berlin style." With the protection of authentic German, Bruce's escapes became more relaxed. Looking back on his record, Bruce thought he had already dug tunnels and disguised himself so he should consider climbing a wall. On a dark and windy night, Bruce made his move. Under the cover of darkness, he climbed over the fence and reached the barbed wire at the edge of the camp. While struggling with the barbed wire, a searchlight suddenly shone on him, followed by a series of bullets. Realizing he was discovered, Bruce decisively gave up. He shouted, "I surrender," in a clear and resonant voice. The effect was surprisingly good. The guards not only stopped shooting, but also burst into laughter. He later found out that phrase did not mean "I surrender," but rather "Attention everyone, I have an announcement to make. I am a somewhat speechless Bruce." And he turned to digging tunnels again. In fact, by this time, after the efforts of the British, French and Polish, it was generally agreed that digging a tunnel out of Colditz was impossible. But Bruce still believed there was one tunnel that could be salvaged, because this tunnel connected to a sewer pipe. You never knew when it might lead out. A few months later, in the sewer, the meticulous Bruce received a fine notice from Aix. A fine notice: "Your Excellency, for damaging the castle's public drainage pipe, you must pay a fine of £100. Same as before. Colditz allows escape attempt, but damaging property requires compensation." After repeated hassles, even the guards at Colditz were getting a little tired of this persistent escaper Bruce. After catching Bruce in the act once again, Aix announced he would be executed. A large group of soldiers paraded Bruce around, and then at the outer wall of the castle, they fired a volley of blank shots at him. The year is now 1944. The prisoners of war at Colditz received orders from the Allied forces. The Allied situation is now excellent. Do not attempt any more escape. The soon-to-be-defeated Germans may take desperate measures. After discussion, the prisoners of war at Colditz decided not to escape anymore. Besides not wanting to provoke the guards further, the castle's supplies were also severely depleted. Since they were no longer provided for as in the past, they did not have the energy to run anymore. Bruce and his comrades made peace with Aix. "We promise not to cause any more trouble, and you please try to maintain the status quo. Hopefully we can all survive this war." In April 1945, Bruce, who was starving at the camp's entrance, suddenly heard a cheer from the castle gate. "We are liberated, we are free." However, faced with the Allied liberation, Bruce was not at all excited. He grabbed a guard's handgun and rushed into the kitchen. He held the cook at gunpoint and demanded he prepare a chicken for him to eat. The German cook in the camp was at a loss for words. "Even the rats in the camp are starving, but if you can get some poultry from the Allies, I can certainly help cook it." And so, after experiencing 5 years of war, Bruce ended his World War I career. In these 5 years he attempted to escape a total of 17 times, and not once was he truly successful. After being rescued by the Allied forces, Bruce returned to England. At the London train station, his wife was waiting for him with their 2 young boys whom he had never met. In waiting for him, after the war ended, because he had actively tried to escape during his captivity, Bruce was awarded the Military Cross. After the war ended, Bruce quickly retired from the military and bought a hotel with his wife. Together they had 9 children. But the experience of the war had a huge impact on Bruce's mindset. Because of the deep impression left on him from learning German in Colditz, and the deep shadow it cast on him, Bruce felt that studying was still useful. In 1946, the 31-year-old Bruce was admitted to Oxford University, and in 1949 he received a Bachelor of Arts degree. In 1953 he was promoted to master, and in the year Bruce became a master, his mother, for her good deeds of caring for the sick and the poor, was awarded the Order of the British Empire. After receiving the medal, his mother said she would be even happier if her son could also receive one. She would be even happier. Bruce was indifferent to medals, but he found his life's purpose in learning, which was to help adults like himself who had a desire to learn continue their education. Worked as an education lecturer at a university. This former troublemaker with a terrible academic record eventually became a respected figure in British education. In the many years that followed, Bruce promoted education in various ways and tried his best to lower the cost of education to the post-war generation. Bruce was a white-haired, cheerful old man. Many Britons knew of the huge contributions he had made to the field of education, but few knew that this old man had once during World War I almost set a record for the number of escape attempts. In 1989, Bruce's achievements as an educator were recognized, and he received the Officer of the Order of the British Empire. He finally passed away in 2000. "We will never know what at the investiture ceremony," Bruce said to the Queen. But what the Queen certainly did not know was that the man, being honored for his work in education, the man of average human height when fighting for freedom, was a true giant.